One of my favorite uses for no-code tools is being able to track the people who are a part of your membership. Being able to look in and see who has an active membership, when is the last payment, how are things going, even building a dashboard so that you can see top level how things are in your membership business. If taking a dive into this is of interest to you, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth, and this is Gap Consulting, where we help you unlock the full potential of no-code tools. SmartSuite is absolutely one of my favorite no-code tools in 2024 and beyond, I am sure. And in this video, I am going to be breaking down for you how to use it for building membership services, tracking a subscription of people who are paying members of your program. Now, before we get into the heart of things, I first want to invite you to join me for some automation training. A lot of the ideas that I share with you in this video are going to rely on the fact that you have a basic understanding of creating automation in no code. It doesn't matter what tool you're using, whether it's SmartSuite, Zapier, Make, or something else. The same fundamental reasons, the same fundamental components apply, and I'm teaching those to you for free in my training at gapconsulting.io/webinar-registration. Go ahead and sign up there, get instant access. But without further ado, let's hop on into my screen and we'll take a look at the next stage. So number one thing is I'm inside of SmartSuite and I can have a bunch of different things going on, but specifically for membership tracking, I'm looking at two very specific tables. Number one is going to be members, right? So we can list out all of our member detail here. And we're going to actually add some information to that we'll see here in just a moment. But the other component for this is going to be payments. So over here on payments, this is where I have a linked relationship to my members table, and I'm tracking the success or not of different payment attempts that we've made inside of our recurring system. So this is imagining some sort of a subscription. You might be using Stripe for this. This is one of the more popular options. And the automation with Stripe is so easy to build. But in this video, we're really going to focus on how to put together the structure inside of SmartSuite. So we have our two tables, members and payments. And here's what I think at a minimum you need to bring in your members table. Number one is going to be a member name. Now, you'll notice here that I brought the member name into the record title, which is the leftmost field. You might call it the primary field. I like it here. It does kind of bum me out because SmartSuite has a very specific field type called name, and you can add, full name, including middle names, salutations, any kind of sign off like junior or the third. Like, it's a really robust field type. We can't use it in the primary field, but I still think it makes sense in most cases to bring the primary field in here. Now, we also want to bring in an email field. So if you don't have one of these already, go ahead and drop an email field in here just by adding a new field just like that. Now, the other components that we really want to track in here are going to be really related to the payment table. So let's quickly drop over to the payment table and take a look over here. So you'll notice that we've got a payment ID, and every time we process a payment, doesn't matter if you're using Stripe or another payment processor, we're going to get some sort of ID or tag for that particular payment. So we want to bring that information in and absolutely store it in our database with an automation. Now, the reason for that is if we need to ever look it up in the future, that is like the key. That's the unique identifier for that payment, and it'll allow us to go right to it inside of our system and identify whatever questions we have, if it's a customer service issue or something like that. Now, the other thing we want to bring in is the date of the payment, right? So when did we go to make that payment? If you have a membership, it's going to be the same day of the month every month. So month over month, you're going to see the same thing. Now, we also need to link up to the member, right? So we need to know who that member is. So let's head back to our members tab and make sure that we have a payment processor ID field. Now, you'll note that I actually already built one of these and it's just right here. It's a text field. And what we're going to do with our automations is when we create this customer inside of our payment processor, again, it could be Stripe, but it doesn't have to be. We're going to go ahead and plug their ID in because every customer object that we build in a payment processor has their own unique ID. So we want to take that ID and plug it back into our system. Now, if we're using Stripe, it'll start with CUS and it'll have some other gibberish, right? Just like a random string of whatever. But you'll want to plug that in here with your automation. So when you first create the member, make sure that you bring that payment processor ID and put it back in here as well. Now, we're going to use that as a key as we're processing payments. So let's say it's June 1st and it's time to process the next payment for this particular customer. Stripe, or whatever system we're using, is going to process that payment, or at least attempt to. And so it's going to go about doing its job. Now we're going to have an automation built on the back end that takes that and says, okay, we just processed another payment for this customer ID. So our automation is going to look up, who is that customer? Take that customer ID and find them. How do we identify that customer in our system? Now, it's really important that we use the customer ID because that will never change. As long as that person has a membership with us, it will always be that ID. But we might change the email address that they want to receive payment notifications sent to. We might change the name of that client inside of our payment processor or inside of our system here. The only thing that will never change for that particular customer object is the customer ID. So let's follow best practices and make sure that we're using it as the thing that ties all this together. So now that we identify with our automation who it is, like who is that member, now we can create a payment for that member. So we build an automation to do this, and we'll know what the payment ID is, whatever that is. We'll know what the date is. In this case, our example, I said June 1st. We know who the member is, so we'll find them here. The automation, again, will do all this lifting for you. And then let's have a status field that tells us whether this was a failed transaction or a completed transaction. Because just because somebody is a member of yours and just because you went to process payment doesn't always mean you're gonna get your money. Sometimes their card might have expired. They might have run out of available funds on that account. There are a number of reasons that you might not get your payment. But if it's complete, let's make sure that we mark it that way. And we can, of course, bring in the dollar amount as well. Now, here's the magic. Let's flip back over to our members now, and we can actually look up and see when their last payment was successfully made. So check this out. We build a formula here that says take a date difference. That is the difference between two dates of the date of the last payment. So whenever that was, in this case, the last payment was on June 1st, which is in the future of this video. And then we're going to say now, and then we're saying days, right? So we're saying, hey, we're going to take whatever the last payment made was, and we're going to bring that day in and we're going to calculate it, compare it to the current date, and tell you how many days off they are from having made that payment. Now, this doesn't make sense because we took a payment in the future. So let's actually delete that payment. I will update this to be a few months prior. Let's go with March 1st here, and we're done. And here we go. We see that May 1st is the last payment that we received. And as of today's recording, it's May 17th. So if I flip back into my members, we're going to see that it's been 16 and a little bit more than a half days since we last processed payment. Now, this is very important. Here's our date of last payment, by the way. We're able to look this and say, hey, we're looking to make sure that the payment was complete, right? We have to make sure it was complete, look at the payment date, and then list it in descending order. And I only want to pull back one of these. Now, this is a very complicated formula, especially if you're not very comfortable with SmartSuite formulas, but we've broken this down in previous videos. The idea of the get list is allowing you to look at a linked relationship, and you can set up certain requirements, certain qualifications, like I only want to bring back the biggest date in that other list of linked payments where the payment was complete. Because otherwise, if it was an incomplete payment, it's not going to impact me here, right? May 1st is the last complete payment. If I instead saw that this payment failed like this, I don't want this to show me May 1st. If it shows me May 1st, I'm not actually collecting money here. So our date of last payment is able to look at this field that we're calculating, looking at rolling up the data from our linked payments and only bringing back the biggest date, the maximum date from our successfully processed payments. All right. So once we have that calculated, now we can track what we think their membership status should be. If it's been over 31 days since this person made a payment with us, there's a problem. they are not an active member, assuming that we have a monthly membership. So we're simply saying, hey, if you are a member and if your days since last payment are greater than 31, then you are inactive. You have, for whatever reason, you have a failed payment come through. You might still be an active member in the sense that we're trying to process payment for you, but you're going to lose access to our tools, to our membership site, because you are currently inactive. You have not made a qualified payment in the last 31 days. So there we have it. You're inactive if your last successful payment was more than 31 days ago. Otherwise, you're active. Cool. There we go. You can see this working in real time. Currently, this person is marked to inactive, but over here on payments, if I mark them complete and come back here, you'll see that now that payment was received in the last 16 and a half days. They're now an active member. So that's pretty much it. The last piece you might consider is adding a single select field here so that your members can actually mark whether they are active or not. So if you have a portal or something along those lines, your members can actually say, I want to deactivate my membership. Okay, fine. We will not process payment. We would build automations to cancel the subscription if the member chose to move themselves to inactive. There are so many different things you can do for running a membership site using no-code tools, but I hope that this video started to inspire some fresh ideas for you. If you have questions, need any help implementing what you saw here, be sure to reach out to our team and visit our website. But in the meantime, keep on building.